Admiral Park Taiho stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars. He had done this 1,000 times before, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the darkness between the stars seemed alive with something terrible. His fleet protected New Sol, a colony world that orbited a distant sun. 12 million humans lived there. They had built cities and farms. Children went to schools. Families ate dinner together. It was a good world. A peaceful world. The communication officer turned to him with a pale face. "Admiral, we are receiving an emergency message from Earth." Taiho walked to the console. The message was short. The words were simple, but they changed everything. The Valari High Senate had declared humanity a threat. All human colonies were to be purified. There would be no warning. There would be no mercy. Taiho felt his blood turn cold. The Valari Empire had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They controlled 17 alien species. Their technology was ancient and powerful. Humanity had lived among the stars for only 300 years. They had always been careful. They had always been respectful. They had done nothing wrong, but 3 weeks ago, a human science team had found something. While mapping an old nebula, they discovered the location of the Valari sacred homeworlds. This was forbidden knowledge. The Valari kept their homeworlds secret from all other species. They believed this secret protected them. Now they believed humanity was a danger that must be removed. "How long do we have?" Taiho asked. The officer checked his screens. "The Valari purification fleet will arrive in 72 hours. 72 hours. 3 days to save 12 million people." Taiho knew it was impossible. His defense fleet had 50 ships. The purification fleet would have thousands. He opened a channel to all human colonies. The same message was playing everywhere. 12 worlds. 12 billion people. All marked for death. On the planet below, his daughter Yuna was working at a terraforming station. She was 26 years old. She had her mother's smile and her father's stubborn heart. Taiho had not seen her in 2 years. He had promised to visit next month. Now there would be no next month. For 3 days, Taiho tried everything. He sent messages to the Valari, begging them to reconsider. He received no response. He ordered evacuations, but there were not enough ships. He prepared his fleet for battle, knowing they would all die. On the 3rd day, the sky above New Sol turned dark with Valari warships. They came in numbers beyond counting. Their vessels were black and silver, shaped like the teeth of some great beast. Yuna sent him one final message. Her face was calm, but he could see the fear in her eyes. "Father," she said, "I am not afraid. I am proud to be your daughter. I am proud to be human. Tell the others to remember us. Tell them what happened here." The transmission ended. Taiho watched from orbit as fire fell from the sky. The Valari ships launched their weapons. Great beams of white light struck the surface. Cities vanished in seconds. Forests became ash. Oceans boiled away. 12 million voices cried out and then fell silent. Taiho stood frozen. He could not speak. He could not move. He could only watch as his daughter's world died. His tactical officer grabbed his arm. "Admiral, we must go. We cannot fight them. We must warn Earth." Taiho wanted to stay. He wanted to die with his daughter. But the officer was right. Someone had to survive. Someone had to tell the story. 3 ships escaped that day. The Defiance, Taiho's flagship. A cargo hauler filled with refugees who had made it off the planet before the bombardment. And a small science vessel, commanded by Dr. Kong Sujin, a brilliant woman who had worked with the team that found the Valari homeworlds. She carried their data with her. She carried the coordinates to every Valari world in the galaxy. They fled through the darkness of space. Behind them, the other 11 colony worlds burned. The same scene repeated across the galaxy. Valari fleets appeared without warning. They gave no chance to surrender. They killed everyone. 12 worlds. 12 billion humans. Gone in a single day. When the 3 ships finally reached Earth, they found a world in shock. The news had traveled faster than their ships. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone had lost someone. President Cho Min-ho addressed the United Earth Council that night. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had led humanity through 50 years of peace. Now, he faced the greatest crisis in human history. "They believe we are finished," he said. His voice was steady, but there was iron beneath it. "They believe we will surrender. They believe we will hide on this small world and wait for death." He paused. "They are wrong." The council chamber was silent. Every face was wet with tears. Every heart was filled with rage. "We will not forget," the president continued. "We will not forgive. And we will not rest until every Valari world burns as our colonies burned." They wanted war. They will get war. They wanted extinction. They will receive extinction. But not ours. Theirs. In the crowd, Admiral Park Tai-ho stood with his surviving officers. Beside him, Dr. Kang Soo-jin clutched a datapad containing the coordinates to every Valari homeworld. Behind them, refugees from the cargo hauler wept for their lost families. Among those refugees was a young woman named Nara. She was 24 years old. She had escaped from New Busan, another colony world, minutes before the bombardment. Her brother had stayed behind to help others reach the evacuation ships. He never made it out. Nara did not cry. She had no tears left. She had only a cold, quiet rage that burned in her chest like a dying star. When the president finished speaking, the council voted. The decision was unanimous. Earth would not surrender. Earth would not negotiate. Earth would answer the Valari Empire with the only language they understood. War. Total war. A war that would not end until one species was erased from the galaxy. Forever, the aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had killed humanity's children. They had destroyed humanity's homes. They had taken everything, but they had left Earth standing. They had left 8 billion humans alive, and they had given those humans something more dangerous than any weapon. They had given them a reason to fight. In the darkness of space, the Valari Empire celebrated their easy victory. They believed the human problem was solved. They returned to their comfortable lives and forgot about the primitive species they had just punished. They did not know that, beneath Earth's mountains and beneath Earth's oceans, humanity was already preparing. They did not know that the survivors carried within them a fire that would never die. They did not know that they had just started a war they could not win. 5 years passed. The galaxy believed humanity was dead. The Valari Empire sent no ships to Earth. They saw no need. What could 8 billion primitives do against an empire that ruled 17 species across 1 million worlds? The humans were trapped on their single planet. They had no fleet. They had no weapons. They were nothing. The Valari returned to their ancient routines. They held their ceremonies. They enjoyed their pleasures. They forgot about the species they had almost destroyed. This was their greatest mistake. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, General Baekhyun walked through endless corridors of steel and light. He was 60 years old, with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much death. Before the war, he had commanded a small peacekeeping force on one of the colony worlds. He had watched that world burn. He had watched his soldiers die. He had sworn that the Valari would pay for every drop of human blood. Now he led Project Ember. This was humanity's secret. This was humanity's hope. For 5 years, every human on Earth had worked toward a single goal. Factories ran day and night. Mines dug deeper than ever before. Scientists worked without sleep. Soldiers trained until their bodies broke and then trained more. The Valari had technology that was thousands of years old. They had inherited it from ancient species that were now extinct. They had never needed to improve it. They had never needed to understand it. Humans were different. Humans had built everything themselves. They understood how things worked. And when Dr. Kang Soo-jin brought back pieces of Valari technology from the destroyed colonies, human scientists did something the Valari thought impossible. They made it better. Dr. Kang Soo-jin stood in her laboratory, surrounded by screens and machines. She had not left this room in 3 weeks. Her hair was gray now, though she was only 45. The stress of the past 5 years had aged everyone. "Show me the results," she said to her assistant. The screens lit up with data. Human weapons now matched Valari weapons in power. Human shields were stronger. Human engines were faster. The aliens had rested on their ancient technology for millennia. Humanity had surpassed them in 5 years. But Sujin had created something even more important. She called it the Genesis device. It was not a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of transformation. When activated on a planet, it would change the atmosphere, the water, the soil. It would make the world perfect for human life, and lethal to everyone else. The ultimate revenge. Not just destroying Valari worlds, but taking them, making them human. In another part of the underground complex, Commander Lee Nara stood before a room of young pilots. She was 29 now. 5 years of training and fighting had turned her from a refugee into a warrior. She still remembered her brother's face. She still heard his voice telling her to run. She had run, and she had survived. Now she would make sure his death meant something. "You are the first generation of the extinction fleet," she told her pilots. "You were children when the Valari burned our colonies. You grew up with the smell of ash in your memories. You do not fight because you want to. You fight because you must." The young faces watched her with hard eyes. Every one of them had lost family in the attacks. Every one of them had grown up dreaming of revenge. "The Valari believe we are weak," Nara continued. "They believe humans break easily. They are wrong. We are the children of survivors. We carry the fire of 12 billion dead, and we will not stop until the galaxy knows our pain." Far from Earth, Admiral Park Taiho flew through the darkness of space. His ship, the Defiance, had spent 5 years mapping the edges of Valari territory. He was old now, past 70. His hair was white. His hands shook sometimes. But his mind was sharp, and his hatred was eternal. He had watched his daughter die. He had carried that memory for 5 years. It was the first thing he saw when he woke. It was the last thing he saw before he slept. It drove him forward when his body wanted to stop. His mission was simple: learn everything about the enemy, find their weaknesses, prepare the way for the fleet that would follow. What he discovered surprised him. The Valari Empire was soft. They had not fought a real war in 12,000 years. Their soldiers were ceremonial. Their commanders were politicians who had never seen battle. They believed their ancient technology made them unbeatable. They did not understand that technology means nothing without the will to use it. Taiho also discovered something else. The Valari had spies watching Earth. They believed the humans were broken, slowly dying on their single world. They sent reports about human poverty and despair. These reports were lies. Agent Yoon Hannah had spent 3 years building a network of false information. She had made the Valari see what they wanted to see. She had hidden the truth of Project Ember behind walls of deception. Hannah was 40 years old, quiet and calm. She had been a diplomat before the war. Now she was a spy operating deep in alien space, surrounded by enemies who would kill her if they knew who she really was. She smiled and bowed and pretended to be a servant. While she gathered secrets that would help destroy an empire, she found the final piece of the puzzle: the location of the Valari Emperor's throne world. The heart of the empire, the ultimate target. When her message reached Earth, President Cho Min-ho called a secret meeting. The leaders of Project Ember gathered in a room deep underground. Admiral Taiho attended through a video connection from his ship. General B. Kyun stood in full military uniform. Dr. Kung Soo-jin brought data on her latest weapons. Commander Lee Nara represented the fleet pilots. The president looked at each of them. "Are we ready?" General B. Kyun nodded. "We have 10,000 warships, 50 million soldiers, every weapon we need," Dr. Sujin added. "Our technology exceeds Valari standards in every category." Commander Nara spoke quietly. "My pilots are prepared to die. They will not fail." Admiral Taiho's voice came through the speakers, rough with age and determination. "I have mapped every Valari patrol route. I know their weaknesses. I know where to strike first. The president stood silent for a long moment. He was 80 years old now. He had spent half a decade preparing for this moment. He had sacrificed everything. Earth had sacrificed everything. "Then we begin," he said. "Send the fleet." In shipyards hidden across Earth's surface and beneath its oceans, 10,000 warships came to life. Their engines glowed with power. Their weapons hummed with energy. Their crews stood ready at their stations. Admiral Park Tai-ho watched from the Defiance as the fleet emerged from Earth's shadow. It was the largest human fleet ever assembled, and it carried within it the rage of 12 billion dead souls. The fleet moved toward the edge of the solar system. Beyond it lay Valari space. Beyond it lay Revenged. Commander Lee Nara sat in her fighter waiting for the jump to hyperspace. She thought of her brother. She thought of the world she had lost. She thought of the future she would build on the ashes of her enemies. "The colonies," she whispered around her. 10,000 ships echoed her words. "For the colonies." The fleet vanished into hyperspace. The Extinction War had begun. The Threshold Gate was a place of power. It was a hyperspace junction, a crossroads where many travel routes met. Whoever controlled the Threshold Gate controlled movement through this part of the galaxy. The Valari had held it for 20,000 years. 300 Valari. Warships guarded the gate. They floated in perfect formation, their silver hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. Their commanders sat in comfortable chairs drinking sweet drinks and discussing politics. They expected no trouble. There had been no trouble for centuries then. The sky tore open. 10,000 human warships exploded out of hyperspace. They came in waves, their weapons already firing. The Valari commanders dropped their drinks and screamed for battle stations. Their crews scrambled to their positions. But it was too late. Much too late. Commander Lee Nara led the vanguard. Her fighter squadron struck first, moving faster than the Valari had ever seen. Their sensors could not track the human ships. Their weapons could not aim quickly enough. By the time they understood what was happening, 100 Valari vessels were already burning. The Valari fleet commander broadcast a message of surrender. He offered to negotiate. He promised concessions. He begged for mercy. Admiral Park Tai-ho's response was simple. "You gave no mercy to our colonies. You will receive none from us." Now, the battle lasted 14 hours. It was not a fight. It was a slaughter. The Valari ships were powerful, but their crews did not know how to use that power. They had practiced war games and studied ancient tactics, but they had never faced an enemy who wanted to kill them. They had never experienced real fear. Human ships weaved through their formations, striking from angles the Valari could not predict. Human soldiers boarded damaged vessels and fought hand-to-hand through the corridors. Human pilots sacrificed themselves to destroy enemy command ships. When the last Valari vessel exploded, Commander Nara flew through the debris field. Her ship was damaged. Her squadron had lost 40 pilots, but they had one. 2,000 humans died at the Threshold Gate. Every name was recorded. Every face was remembered. They were the first casualties of the Extinction War. They would not be forgotten. Admiral Tai-ho broadcast a message across all Valari frequencies. His voice was calm, but there was ice in every word. "You killed our children. You burned our worlds. Now we return what you gave us. Extinction." The message spread across the galaxy like fire. The Valari Empire heard it and could not believe it. The Primitives had destroyed 300 warships. The Primitives had taken the Threshold Gate. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. But the messages kept coming. Human fleets struck 3 more border systems in the following weeks. Valari defense stations fell. Valari colonies burned. Valari soldiers died by the thousands. General Bikuin led the ground assaults. On a world called Varus, he commanded 50,000 troops against a garrison of 100,000 Valari warriors. The aliens had better positions and better numbers. It did not matter. Human soldiers fought with a fury the Valari had never seen. They charged into fire. They dragged wounded enemies from cover and killed them with bare hands. They screamed the names of dead colonies as they advanced. The Valari garrison surrendered after 3 days. General Baekhyun accepted the surrender, then executed the garrison commander on video. He broadcast the execution across the planet. "This is the price of genocide," he said to the cameras. "Remember it." Back on Earth, President Cho Min-ho watched the reports come in. Victory after victory, world after world falling to human forces. It was everything they had planned, everything they had sacrificed for. But not everyone was celebrating. Councilwoman Imbora stood before the president in his private office. She was 70 years old, a former professor of ethics who had joined the government after the attacks. She had supported the war at first. Now she had doubts. "We are becoming monsters," she said. "I have seen the recordings from Varus. Our soldiers are committing atrocities. We are killing prisoners. We are destroying civilian infrastructure. We are doing exactly what the Valari did to us." The president looked tired. He had not slept well in months. "They murdered 12 billion of our people, Bora. Children, infants. They burned them alive and laughed while they did it. What mercy do they deserve?" "This is not about them," Bora replied. "This is about us. About what we become. If we kill every Valari in the galaxy, what will we be at the end? Will we still be human? Or will we be something else? Something worse?" The president had no answer. He turned away and looked out the window at the night sky. In her laboratory, Dr. Kong Soo-jin worked on her final project. The Genesis device was ready for deployment. It had been tested on small asteroids and distant moons. It worked perfectly. One device could transform an entire planet in a matter of days, but she had also discovered something else. While studying the ancient Valari texts captured from their colonies, she found references to something called the Awakening. The Valari believed that the precursors, the ancient species who had built their technology, were not truly dead. They were sleeping, and one day they would return. The Valari sacred homeworlds were not just symbols of power. They were sites of precursor technology, ancient machines buried deep beneath the surface. The Valari did not fully understand these machines, but they guarded them jealously when humanity discovered the homeworld locations. The Valari did not just see a security threat. They saw the risk that humans would find what lay beneath. Find it and use it. Soo-jin reported her discovery to Admiral Taiho. "If we destroy the Valari homeworlds with Genesis devices, we will also destroy the precursor technology. We might be erasing knowledge that could advance humanity by thousands of years." Taiho listened in silence. Then he said, "I will consider this when the time comes. For now, we fight." The war continued. Human fleets pushed deeper into Valari territory. More worlds fell. More aliens died. The galaxy watched in shock as the primitives cut a path of destruction through the oldest empire in known space. Then the Valari Emperor finally responded. Orin, the Eternal, had ruled for 800 years. He was ancient even by Valari standards, kept alive by machines and medicine that humans could not understand. He had believed the human war would end quickly. He had been wrong. He summoned the combined fleet, every warship from every species in the Empire. 4 million vessels. It was the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. It would crush the human invaders once and for all. Commander Lee Nara received the intelligence report from Agent Yunhana. 4 million ships. Against their surviving force of 8,000, she called a meeting of her squadron leaders. They sat in a damaged briefing room on a captured Valari station, surrounded by the bodies of their enemies. "The combined fleet is coming," she told them. "They outnumber us 500 to 1. No one spoke. No one showed fear. They had all known this day would come. Nara smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Good. Now they will learn what humans can do when we have nothing left to lose." The human fleet prepared for the greatest battle of the war. They knew most of them would die. They did not care. They had lost too much to turn back now. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the Defiance. He thought of his daughter. He thought of the burning colonies. He thought of the revenge he had dreamed of for 5 years. "All ships," he said quietly. "Set course for the void of Kale. We will meet them there." The human fleet moved toward its destiny. 4 million enemies waited in the darkness ahead. The galaxy held its breath. The void of Kale was a place of emptiness. It lay between two spiral arms of the galaxy, far from any star or planet. Nothing lived there. Nothing had ever lived there. It was a perfect place to die. Admiral Park Tai-ho had chosen this battlefield carefully. The Volari liked to fight near planets, where they could use gravity wells and orbital stations to their advantage. In the void, there were no advantages. Only ships and weapons and will. The human fleet arrived first. 8,000 vessels spread across 1 million kilometers of empty space. They looked small. They looked weak. But the fire in their hearts burned brighter than any star. Lieutenant Han Wujin stood at his station on the bridge of the Defiance. He was 32 years old, the youngest tactical officer in the fleet. He had lost his entire family on New Sol. He had been off-world when the attack came, serving as a junior officer on a trading ship. He never got to say goodbye. "Sir," he said to Admiral Tai-ho, "the combined fleet is approaching. I count for 1,200,000 vessels." Tai-ho nodded slowly. He had expected this. He had planned for this. "Calculate our odds of victory," he said. Wujin's fingers moved across his console. The numbers appeared on his screen. He stared at them for a long moment. 1 in 10,000, sir? Tai-ho smiled. It was a strange, sad smile. Better odds than our colonies had. They had no chance at all. The combined fleet emerged from hyperspace like a wall of death. Ships of every size and shape filled the darkness. 17 different species flew together under the Volari banner. They had conquered worlds before humans could speak. They had ruled the galaxy before humans could walk. They believed this battle would be easy, the Volari. Fleet commander broadcast a message. "Humans, you have fought bravely. But this ends now. Surrender, and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will make you suffer for centuries." Admiral Tai-ho did not respond with words. He responded with missiles. The battle began. Human ships moved in patterns the Volari had never seen. They did not form lines or squares like civilized species. They swarmed. They scattered. They struck and retreated and struck again. Their weapons hit targets they should have missed. Their shields absorbed damage they should have failed to stop. Commander Lee Nara led her squadron into the heart of the enemy fleet. Her pilots followed without hesitation. They knew most of them would not return. They did not care for the colonies. She screamed over the radio, "For the colonies." 1,000 voices answered. They struck the Volari command ships with everything they had. Missiles, energy beams. When those ran out, they rammed their own ships into enemy bridges. Each human ship that died took a dozen Volari ships with it. The battle raged for 11 days. 11 days of constant fighting. 11 days of death and fire. Ships were destroyed by the tens of thousands. Bodies floated in the void, frozen and forgotten. On the third day, Commander Nara's squadron was trapped behind enemy lines. Their ammunition was gone. Their shields were failing. 100 Volari ships surrounded them. Nara looked at her fuel gauge. She looked at the enemy command ship in the distance. She made her choice. "All ships, follow me. We're going to take that command ship." Her pilots did not question. They turned their dying fighters toward the enemy and accelerated to maximum speed. Nara's ship was the first to hit. It struck the command ship's bridge at full speed, punching through shields and armor. The explosion killed 3,000 Volari officers. It also destroyed her fighter, but Nara survived. Her escape pod ejected a second before impact. It tumbled through the debris field, leaking air and power. For 3 days, she floated alone in the darkness. Watching the battle continue around her on the 6th day, General Baekhyun led a boarding assault on a Volari supply station. His troops had been fighting for 40 hours without rest. They were exhausted. They were wounded. They did not stop. The Volari defenders fought hard. They had learned from the earlier battles. They knew humans were dangerous in close combat. They set traps and ambushes throughout the station. Baekhyun walked through every trap. His armor was torn. His weapons were empty. When a Valari soldier jumped from the shadows, he killed it with his combat knife. When another appeared, he killed it with his bare hands. His soldiers followed him, stepping over the bodies he left behind by the seventh day. The human fleet had lost 60% of its ships. 30 million soldiers were dead. The combined fleet had lost 2 million vessels. But they still outnumbered the humans by hundreds to one. Admiral Taiho sat alone in his quarters. He was exhausted. He had not slept in days. The face of his daughter haunted him every time he closed his eyes. A communication arrived from Dr. Kong Sujin. She was aboard a science vessel far from the battle, studying the Valari technology they had captured. "Admiral, I have discovered something important. The precursor archives beneath the Valari homeworlds are real. If we can capture them instead of destroying them, we could advance our technology by 1,000 years. But more importantly, I found out why the Valari were so afraid of us finding the homeworlds." Taiho listened as she explained. The precursors had not just left technology behind. They had left warnings. Warnings about species that grew too fast and too aggressive. Species that could not be controlled. The Valari had seen humans expanding across the stars. They had seen human innovation. They had seen how quickly humans learned and adapted. And they had recognized the pattern from the precursor warnings. Humanity was what the precursors had warned about. A species that would not stop. A species that would eventually surpass everyone. The Valaria had not attacked out of anger over the discovered coordinates. They had attacked out of fear. Pure, primal fear of what humanity would become. Taiho thought about this for a long time. Then he returned to the bridge. On the 9th day, the combined fleet began to retreat. They had lost too many ships. Too many soldiers. Their morale was broken. The Valari commanders could not understand what had happened. They had overwhelming numbers. They had superior experience. They should have won easily. Instead, they were running from a species that had only been among the stars for 3 centuries. They did not understand that. Numbers and experience meant nothing against an enemy who was willing to die. They did not understand that humans fought not for victory, but for vengeance. Every human pilot flew, knowing they would probably die. Every human soldier charged, knowing they might not return. This made them unstoppable. On the 11th day, the last combined fleet ship fled into hyperspace. The void of Kale was silent, except for the wreckage of 4 million vessels, Commander. Alina Ra's escape pod was finally found. She was barely alive, frozen and starved, but she was alive. Medics rushed her to the Defiance, where the fleet's best doctors fought to save her. Admiral Taiho stood by her bedside. When she finally opened her eyes, he was the first thing she saw. "Did we win?" she whispered. He nodded. "We won. The combined fleet is destroyed." She tried to smile, but she was too weak. "How many did we lose?" 60% of the fleet? 30 million soldiers. Nara closed her eyes. 30 million. 30 million more names to add to the list. 30 million more ghosts to carry forward. "Then we keep going," she said quietly, "until it's over." Taiho looked at her for a long moment. She was barely 30 years old, and she had already suffered more than most humans in history. But she was not broken. None of them were broken. He gave the order to advance. The surviving human fleet moved toward the heart of the Valari Empire, toward the throne world, toward the end. Behind them, the void of Kale slowly filled with drifting wreckage and frozen bodies. Human and alien, floating together in the endless dark. The greatest battle of the war was over. The final battle was about to begin. 1 year after the Battle of Kale's Void, Admiral Park Taiho stood on the bridge of the Defiance and looked down at Velar Prime. The Valari homeworld was beautiful. Blue oceans and green forests covered its surface. White cities rose from the land like flowers made of glass. It was a peaceful world. An ancient world. A world where the Valari had lived for 100,000 years. Now it burned. Human ships had bombarded the military installations. Valari defense satellites drifted in pieces through orbit. The great cities were dark, their power grids destroyed. 3 billion Volari civilians, huddled in shelters. Waiting to learn their fate, Emperor Orin the Eternal had fled to the deep sanctum, a bunker buried miles beneath the planet's surface. Ancient precursor machines protected it. Human weapons could not reach it, but they did not need to. On Earth, President Cho Min-ho watched the live transmission. He was 81 years old now. He had given everything to this war. His health, his family, his soul. And now it came down to this moment. Admiral Taiho, he said through the communication link, the decision is yours. Taiho understood. The Genesis device was ready. One command, and Velar Prime's atmosphere would transform. The oceans would turn to acid. The air would become poison. 3 billion Volari would die screaming, just as 12 billion humans had died 6 years ago. It would be perfect revenge. Eye for eye. Death for death. Everything they had worked for. Around him, his officers waited in silence. General Bikaon stood near the weapons console, his hand ready to give the activation order. He had fought through hell to reach this moment. He wanted to press that button more than anything. Commander Linara stood by the viewport, looking down at the burning world. Her body was covered in scars from the Battle of Kale's Void. She had spent 3 days dying in an escape pod. She had earned the right to watch this moment. Dr. Kung Suzhen worked at a science station, monitoring the precursor signals coming from deep beneath the planet's surface. The ancient machines were still there, still waiting. 1,000 years of knowledge. Buried under an empire of ashes, Lieutenant Han Wujin sat at his tactical console, calculating the device's effect radius. He had run the numbers 100 times. Every Volari on the planet would die. None would escape. Agent Yoon Hannah had joined them for the final battle. She stood in the shadows, watching everything with her quiet eyes. She had spent years lying to the enemy. Now she wanted to see the truth. Taiho thought about his daughter Yuna. He saw her face in his memory, the way she smiled when she was happy. He heard her last message, telling him she was proud to be human. He remembered the fire falling from the sky as her world died. He had lived for this moment. He had fought for this moment. He had sacrificed everything for this moment. And now that it was here, he did not know what to do. Councilwoman Imbora's words echoed in his mind. If we become them, they win. Was she right? If he killed 3 billion civilians, would he be any different from the Volari who had killed his daughter? Would humanity become the monsters they had sworn to destroy? He looked at his officers, at the faces of people who had lost everything, at the rage and pain in their eyes. General Bikun spoke first. Admiral, we did not come this far to show mercy. They burned our children. They laughed while they did it. Give the order. Lieutenant Wujin nodded. Sir, I watched the recordings from New Seoul. They killed infants in their beds. They deserve everything we can give them. Commander Nara said nothing. She just stared at the planet below, her face empty. Dr. Sujin spoke quietly. Admiral, the precursor archives are directly beneath the deep sanctum. If we use the Genesis device, we will destroy them forever. We might be erasing knowledge that could save millions of human lives in the future. Agent Hannah stepped forward from the shadows. I have new intelligence, Admiral. The other 16 species in the Volari Empire are preparing to surrender. They want nothing more to do with this war. Only the Volari themselves continue to resist. Taiho processed this information. 16 species ready to submit to human rule. Only one species standing in the way. 3 billion lives against 1,000 years of knowledge. Revenge against the future. He closed his eyes. He saw Yuna's face again. She was smiling. She was telling him she was proud. Proud of what? Proud of a father who murdered billions? Proud of a humanity that answered genocide with genocide? Or proud of a father who found another way? Taiho opened his eyes. Open a channel to Velar Prime, he said. All frequencies. General Bikayan's face twisted with anger. Admiral, no. We cannot negotiate with these animals. I am not negotiating, Taiho replied. I am offering terms. He stepped forward and spoke into the communicator. His voice broadcast across the planet, reaching every shelter, every bunker, every hiding place. This is Admiral Park Tai-ho of the human fleet. Your empire is finished. Your fleets are ash. Your allies are surrendering. You have lost. He paused, letting the words sink in. I hold in my hand the power to destroy your world, to kill every man, woman, and child on your planet, to erase your species from history, just as you tried to erase mine. On the planet below, 3 billion Volari listened in terror, but I will not use it. The bridge of the Defiance fell silent. General Baekhyun stared in disbelief. Lieutenant Woojin looked confused. Only Commander Nara showed no reaction. Tai-ho continued. You will surrender your emperor for trial. You will submit to human governance forever. You will live as we lived for 3 centuries. Watched, contained, never trusted. You will raise your children knowing that humans rule the stars and that your species exists only because we allowed it. He took a deep breath. This is mercy. You do not deserve it. But we are not giving it to you for your sake. We are doing it for ours. Because if we become like you, then you have one, and you will never win. He ended the transmission. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a new message came from the planet's surface. It was from the deep sanctum. Emperor Orin, the Eternal, spoke. His voice was ancient and full of contempt. We will never surrender to primitives. We will never submit to humans. We would rather die with honor than live in shame. Tai-ho nodded slowly. He had expected this, but then something unexpected happened. Another transmission came from the deep sanctum. A different voice. Younger, angrier. This is Commander Vorn of the Imperial Guard. Emperor Orin no longer speaks for our people. His pride has cost us everything. His arrogance has destroyed our empire. We choose to live. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the transmission. Then silence. Then Vorin spoke again. The Emperor is dead. The Volari Empire surrenders. General Baekhyun slammed his fist against the console. No, they cannot be allowed to live. After everything they did, they cannot just surrender. Tai-ho turned to face him. General, I understand your pain. I share it. But this war was never about killing Volari. It was about making sure no one ever kills humans again. We have achieved that. We have won. Baekhyun's face twisted with rage. Then, slowly, the anger faded. What replaced it was something worse. Emptiness. He had lived for revenge for 6 years. Now that revenge was taken from him, he did not know who he was anymore. He turned and walked off the bridge without another word. Commander Nara finally spoke. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper. My brother would have been happy. He never wanted me to become a killer. He wanted me to build things, create things. He would have wanted this. Tears ran down her scarred face. They were the first tears she had shed since the day her world burned. Tai-ho put a hand on her shoulder. Then we will build. We will create. We will make the galaxy something worth living in. That is how we honor the dead. The war ended that day. The Volari surrendered. The 16 allied species submitted to human rule. The galaxy, for the first time in 50,000 years, had a new master. 50 years later, Admiral Park Tai-ho died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by his grandchildren. Children who had never known war. Children who would never know the fear of burning skies. Commander Linara became the governor of Threshold Gate. She transformed the site of humanity's first victory into a memorial for all who died. Every year, millions of humans and aliens visited to remember. General Baekhyun vanished into the frontier. Some said he was hunting the last Volari war criminals. Some said he was searching for something he had lost. The part of himself that could feel peace. Dr. Kong Soo-jin unlocked the precursor archives. She gave humanity 1,000 years of advancement in a single generation. Diseases were cured. Stars were tamed. Death itself began to retreat. Her statue stood on New Busan, rebuilt as humanity's first restored colony world. Agent Yunhana retired to a small farm on Earth. She never spoke about the war again. She spent her remaining years growing flowers and watching the sunrise, and in schools across human space. Children learned the story of the Extinction War. They learned that humanity had been attacked without warning. They learned that humanity had fought back with everything they had. They learned that humanity had won. When Admiral Parktejo held the power to destroy an entire species, he chose mercy. Not because the enemy deserved it, but because humanity deserved to be better than its enemies. That was what made humans different. That was what made humans dangerous. They could hate with all their hearts and fight with all their strength. But in the end, they could choose to be more than conquerors.